please.
President, it's with some concern that I rise on this motion. It is a motion that Ms Patton has pursued in one form or another for some time, including at the Procedure Committee. But it is a motion that I think misses important points. Yes, there is no question that the Lord's Prayer is a Judeo-Christian prayer, a prayer that comes mainly from the New Testament. It is a prayer that goes way back into our history, back into the earliest days of Christianity, but it's also a prayer that stands for much, much more. It's a prayer that actually points directly to the individualism, which paradoxically Ms Patton pointed to a moment ago, that is inherent within Christianity. And many of the traditions that have built our Parliament, our Westminster system, our way of life, our legal system, and our inherent respect for human rights all come from that tradition. And the Lord's Prayer typifies that, and that is the importance of it. I say too, heritage is important, and I do feel very strongly that we've got to be prepared to stand up for our own heritage, and we've got to be prepared to say, actually, you know, it's a little bit like a beautiful old building. You just don't knock it over because there's some new modern thing come along. You actually have got to judge and keep important traditions in place, and I say this is such a tradition. Ms Patton says it's not part of a culture war. Of course this is part of a culture war. Of course this is about an attack on Western tradition. Of course this is about an attack on all that is true and important values to many people in our society. I also think this is the wrong time. We're in the middle of a pandemic. COVID-19 has been running rampant. We've had many deaths in our state, and I don't think that this is the most important target for a change at this time. I think also Ms Patton has misunderstood the importance of consultation, and I think that if we are going to make such a change, we should do it in a full, public and transparent way. And we said that with the minority report from the Procedure Committee a couple of years ago. We were quite clear that if the government and minor parties wanted to proceed, we would participate in a full and transparent process where everyone had their say. But to do this without that process, I think, is quite wrong too. I do think that it is about freedom and liberty. It is about the signal and about our history and about the fact that that prayer does actually link straight back into our past, the tradition that built the Westminster system. You know, that is actually a big part of where we've come from, and it's a big part of our system. And I, for one, don't believe that there is anything wrong with standing up for those traditions and saying, let's look at history, but let's move forward, but do so in recognition of our history. You know, for that reason, I and the Coalition will oppose this motion. We think there does need to be the consultation. We think this is the wrong time. We think the prayer stands for much, much more than has been allowed by some. I mean, even the Premier said today that he says this should not be done at this time. This is not on his agenda. He says that this should be done at the start of a parliament. Well, that's a legitimate point. If you're going to sit and change things in this way willy-nilly, well, that's also something that I think is worthy of consideration. But tradition is important. I recognise where we've come from, and I think that's what the prayer does too. And in that sense, I think it's very important to maintain those traditions and that reflection back to our past. Yeah.